On the 10th of March, the final report of the open-ended working group was presented by the chair, the Swiss ambassador, Jörg Glauber, here in Geneva. So you have been following closely these negotiations. It seems like now the open-ended working group has finished its work. So what's happening now?
As you know, there was a twin process, right? So after in 2017, the previous UNGGE, the group of governmental experts, failed to have a consensus report. When they started up a new process, and that was in December 2018, the process got split. So Russia favored a resolution, put in a resolution to get an open-ended working group to work on cyber. And the Americans championed the resolution to get a new UNGGE up and running. And in its infinite wisdom, the General Assembly voted both these resolutions through. So then we had a twin process of GGE and open-ended working, which largely had the same mandate. So the overlap is sort of 90 to 95%.
It doesn't seem there is a motion towards creating a framework, a treaty of sorts.
No, well, it depends how you see it, right? So again, Russia has already tabled a resolution, and again, in its infinite wisdom, the UN General Assembly has voted it through for a new round of the open-ended working group for the next 5 years. So even before this process was ended, the open-ended working group, there is already a follow-up procedure in terms of a new open-ended working group. So in that sense, things will continue along. And then there's various ideas kicking around. I mean, the UNGG hasn't finished up its report yet. Maybe that will be a consensus report too, so that will add to the debate. And also there is the idea championed by France and Egypt of a program of action. This is a slightly different process that is also folded into the whole mix. That has been gaining support. It got a mention in the open-ended working group report, but it's not yet done. And there's still in the final paragraph, I think that's paragraph 80, there is a minor reference, which was not pleasing to all, but there's a minor reference to the possibility of a new legal instrument.
Oh, so that is still on the cards.
That's how you define the cards. I mean, it's as a possibility in the final report. Politically, I'm not that certain there is a lot of enthusiasm for it among some states. Some states have been trying to amble the discussion towards a new legal instrument from the get-go, Russia, China, and others. And others have been resisting this. So in that sense, it is significant that it is mentioned in the text, but it is mentioned as a possibility.
So what is the resistance? Why?
To a certain extent, so what we have seen in the 2013 and the 2015 reports is that the consensus that emerged there, which is now reconfirmed in this open-ended working group report, is that international law applies in cyberspace as is, right? So there is no need for a new body of international law because we have a functioning body of law that just needs to be transferred to the online situation. I think that is a cornerstone of the belief of many states, especially the Western states. And that obviously sits not very well with starting a new legal treaty that basically runs from the premise that saying, okay, cyberspace is so special, we need new international law to deal with it. And so it's very hard to combine those things. If you say that international law applies in its entirety in the online system, then you're talking about international law, but not necessarily about a new treaty for cyberspace, especially. I think that's where the resistance is.
I see. And also, do you think part of the problem as well is because technology changes so fast and government bodies, and they don't go as fast in terms of meeting in the international stage and discussing all these issues?
I think that's part of it. I think that's also very slowly changing. And in that sense, I think the open-ended working group has been a very positive contribution in the sense that many more states have to head around how this impacts their own political system, how it impacts foreign relations in a diplomatic sense. So I think that's a good thing. But to a certain extent, again, there is also different views in this. So some people say, yes, the technology is so different that we need all kinds of different things to deal with it in legal sense or in political sense. And others say, yes, it's different, but it's also just an instrument. It's much more about the behavior of states using these instruments than it is about the instruments themselves. And this is a very old discussion in anything that has to do with technology and conflict. Do we regulate the new instruments, the new technologies, or do we keep close to regulating what we think states can or cannot do?
And what about the final report? The private sector, this is the first time that the private sector and civil society could be called, because the government group of experts is, as it says in the name, it's government, right? Although, of course, technology companies have to participate because they know what's happening and they can also help explain what is happening in cyberspace. So what do you say is the main takeaway? What can we look forward to in order to continue? So there is the possibility that a new working group will start its proceedings in what, coming fall or so?
I think it's going to depend a little bit also what happens with the UNGGE, but let's park that for now. If we just look at the report, then it sort of depends. If you look at the content and you look at everything that's going on in cyberspace with the attacks and all the operations, then it's probably a slightly disappointing report because there's not that much in it that really moves the dial forward. If you take it in light of where we are in terms of international politics, geopolitics, and the dissensus that is very common at the moment worldwide, but also in cyberspace, then there is something gained by this report. And I think one of the things that is important is when Russia pushed this forward, this open-ended working group as a new model, it did so by saying the UNGGE is a not transparent process. That's behind closed doors, and only a few states, elected states, are present there. So it's a very non-inclusive process. What this report, Open-ended Working Group report, does is reaffirm some of the key insights that were in the 2010, 2013, and 2015 UNGGE reports, but now out in the open with every state participating, or at least being able to participate in these deliberations and saying by consensus, yes, this is part of our acquis, this is part of what we have achieved so far. And whereas some states sort of could point towards the closed process of UNGGE before, saying, okay, we were not part of it, this time they were part of it. So that is a small win, but it provides a stepping stone for next steps. So this is now part of what states have achieved collectively. And also there's a few small new issues that were raised up, for example, about election interference, about operations against healthcare systems, etc. So these are very small, the protection of the public core of the internet in a different kind of language, but it's in there. And these are now also part of a consensus document. You can't leave it there because the way it's formulated is basically just flagging that there are problems here. So you need to build on this. But once you start flagging certain things as being important, and then you have a continuation of the process for the next 5 years in a new open-ended working group and perhaps in a program of action, then you're going to have to deal with some of these issues. And what better to start with than the issues that you have flagged in a consensus report by the open-ended working group.
Thank you so much, Dr. Broeders from the University of Leiden. Thank you very much.
Yeah.